And now, as part of our Hidden Histories series, we look back on the legacy of a larger-than-life figure in her own community. Her contributions to the fight for gay and transgender rights were, until recently, largely overlooked.
The founder of NWA is publicly supporting one of the police officers accused of violating Rodney King's civil rights. In a Los Angeles Times interview, Eazy-E, whose real name is Eric Wright.
We all know that this world has never been an easy place for those in the LGBTQ+ community. But if you were born a person of color, an artist living in the 1970s, amid a society still drowning in prejudice, discrimination, and violence, then the struggle became infinitely more brutal. Would you believe that a rock and roll legend once had to hurriedly marry a woman only to be betrayed by his secret male lover? That some artists died in such utter loneliness that even their own parents refused to attend their funerals? Behind the glory, behind the timeless music, lie earth-shattering secrets that were never revealed. In today's video, join us as we dive into the untold stories of 19 African American LGBTQ+ artists whose deaths remain among the most tragic in Hollywood history. Some of the names on this list will leave you stunned, asking yourself, how could it possibly be them? 19. Eazy-E, betrayed by the one he loved the most. In the late 1980s, Eazy-E, real name Eric Lynn Wright, and his group NWA exploded onto the hip-hop scene like a hurricane. The streets hailed him as a living legend, and the media chased his every step as if he were a king. But beneath all the fame, Eazy-E concealed a truth he could never speak aloud: a hidden same-sex relationship with someone from the underground scene. Faced with overwhelming societal pressure and the harsh scrutiny of the rap community, Eazy-E was forced to make a choice. On March 14, 1995, in a private, hurried ceremony in Los Angeles, he married Tamika Woods. The wedding was rushed, filled with unfamiliar faces and forced smiles. It wasn't the beginning of love. It was the closing of his freedom, the moment he imprisoned himself to protect his reputation. What no one knew was that, hidden in the shadows, a broken heart had already twisted into hatred. The former lover he had kept secret was quietly plotting the most silent and cruel revenge. On the night of February 24, 1995, at the Ruthless Record Studio in Los Angeles, while Eazy-E was recording a new track to revive his faltering career, a sudden wave of dizziness hit him. He collapsed onto the cold concrete floor, his trembling hand grasping for air. Everyone thought it was mere exhaustion, but when he was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, the doctor coldly announced, "He's in the final stage of HIV/AIDS." Eric was stunned. He had never appeared frail, never wasted away, never shown any symptoms typically associated with the disease. The virus progressed at an unnaturally rapid pace, puzzling even the doctors. Lying on his hospital bed, struggling to breathe, Eazy-E began piecing together the blood-stained fragments of memory. Just a few days after that cold wedding, his former lover had begged to see him one last time at a small hotel hidden deep in an old Los Angeles neighborhood. That night, amidst whispered tears, they shared one final desperate intimacy. But perhaps that very encounter carried his death sentence. Every night, in feverish delirium, Eazy-E muttered, "It was him. He gave me this on purpose." On March 26, 1995, Eazy-E took his last breath at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center just over a month after being hospitalized. That day, Los Angeles was drenched in a grim gray rain, as if the heavens themselves were mourning a lost soul. There were no crowds to grieve him, no music to send him off. Those who once called him brother now coldly turned away, while Tamika Woods quietly seized control of his estate. A few weeks later, on the night of April 17, 1995, at Rose Hills Memorial Park, a strange letter was discovered placed atop his grave, sealed tightly in a black envelope. Inside, there was only a single chilling line, scrawled in dried blood. "You are mine, and no one else will ever have you." And so, the truth behind Eazy-E's death was forever buried beneath the cold earth, leaving only one haunting question. Did he die a victim of cruel fate, or was it a meticulously woven crime born of love, betrayal, and vengeance? 18. Dorothy Dandridge. When a pawn has outlived its usefulness. In the early 1950s, Dorothy Dandridge shone like a beacon in a cold, segregated Hollywood. With her role in Carmen Jones, 1954, she became the first black actress ever nominated for an Oscar, becoming both a symbol of hope and a target of relentless scrutiny. Yet behind the dazzling stage lights, Dorothy hid a secret that, if exposed, would destroy her entire career. Few knew that Dorothy shared a passionate love affair with a famous actress. They expressed their love through hurried touches behind the scenes, secret glances exchanged beneath thousands of prying lenses. In a world built on lies, only this woman made Dorothy feel truly alive. But society at that time would never allow two black women to openly love each other. On September 22, 1959, Dorothy was forced into marrying Jack Dennison, a rough, unloving man. The wedding, held coldly in Beverly Hills, was void of laughter. Even as she said her vows, Dorothy's mind was filled with images of the woman she truly loved. Just weeks later, on a chilly autumn night, Dorothy secretly arranged a meeting with her former lover in a hidden room in Santa Monica. That night, amid old, crumbling walls, they clung to each other, their tears mingling with desperate kisses. It would be the last time Dorothy's heart beat for love. Soon after, she sank into a haze of sedatives, covertly pushed on her by studio executives under the guise of stabilizing her mood. Deep inside, she knew she was nothing more than a pawn whose time had run out. The tragedy struck on the night of September 8, 1965. In her lonely Hollywood apartment, Dorothy was found dead, her hand still clutching an empty pill bottle. The death was ruled an accident, but among those who loved her, a bleeding question remained. Who truly killed Dorothy, the crushing weight of prejudice, or a darker hand pulling unseen strings? On her nightstand, they found a faded photograph. Dorothy leaning affectionately on the shoulder of an anonymous woman, both of them smiling radiantly, as if the world outside had never existed. 17. Kenny Green, the star, without a funeral. Kenny Green was once a shining star in the R&B scene of the 1990s. With his sweet voice and natural songwriting talent, he helped elevate intro to iconic status and penned timeless hits for artists like Mary J. Blige, including Reminisce and Love No Limit. Yet deep within his heart, a silent storm raged. At the height of his career, Kenny hid a truth that could destroy him. He was bisexual. In a world where quiet prejudices ran deep within R&B, coming out was tantamount to career suicide. So he loved in the shadows, living a double life of passion and secrecy. Then, one night in late 1995, in a small Brooklyn apartment, Kenny reunited with an old lover. In a moment of weakness, they fell into each other's arms, desperate to erase the years of loneliness. It would be the last time Kenny allowed himself to live openly. A few months later, strange symptoms began to appear, persistent fevers, sores that refused to heal. When Kenny checked into Mount Sinai Hospital in the summer of 2001, the doctors needed only a glance before solemnly delivering the news. He had full-blown HIV/AIDS. If this news leaked, it would destroy Intro's reputation, so Kenny was forced into silence, even from his own family. On his hospital bed, gaunt and frail, Kenny finally spoke the truth during a tearful interview. "I love who I want to love. I have no regrets." But by then, it was too late. On October 1, 2001, in a cold hospital room at Mount Sinai, Kenny Green took his final breath. The greatest heartbreak was that his family, gripped by shame and fear of public backlash, refused to take responsibility for his funeral. Thus, there were no parents or siblings weeping at his casket. Only a few loyal friends and colleagues stepped forward to arrange a modest farewell. On a chilling autumn afternoon in a small cemetery on the outskirts of Brooklyn, among rows of silent tombstones and the howling wind through the bare trees, they laid Kenny to rest. Everything unfolded hastily, as if the world itself was eager to erase him. It was a tragic end for a man who had once brought light and music to so many hearts. 16. Sylvester, the last song of the Queen of Disco. In the late 1970s, Sylvester was hailed as the Queen of Disco, his soaring falsetto like a soul set ablaze, a beacon of freedom for the LGBTQ+ community. But behind the bright lights, he had only one steadfast love, Rick Cranmer. In 1987, while the two were savoring their happiness, Rick suddenly fell ill. On a rainy evening, July 5, 1987, in a small apartment in San Francisco's Castro district, Sylvester sat by Rick's bedside. Rick's face was gaunt, his lips pale, his once strong body now just a shadow of the man Sylvester loved. Rick's coughing echoed heavily through the stifling room. After tests, doctors confirmed the worst. Rick had HIV/AIDS, and it was only a matter of time. Even worse, Sylvester himself tested positive soon after. Two men, deeply in love, now condemned to fight a battle no one could win. Holding Rick's trembling hand, Sylvester whispered through tears, "We'll face this together." 1 month later, Rick died in Sylvester's arms. His death was a brutal blow to Sylvester's heart. He had lost his friend, his lover, his only true anchor. But the world kept spinning, and Sylvester knew his own light was fading too. On December 10, 1988, at San Francisco General Hospital, Sylvester lay on his hospital bed, his body ravaged by illness. The world around him blurred and faded. Cough after painful cough racked his frame, and only the sound of old songs lingered in his mind. At 4:12 p.m., he asked the nurses to play Patti LaBelle's "You Are My Friend." In the silent room, the song rose softly, a tender goodbye. "Rick, I'm coming to you," he murmured through delirium. And just a few minutes later, Sylvester's heart stopped beating, closing the final chapter of a life that was both dazzling and profoundly tragic. 15. Germaine Stewart, the R&B star, who couldn't face the truth. Germaine Stewart, the standout pop R&B star of the 1980s, with the hit song "We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off," lived his entire life carrying a deep secret. He was gay and an HIV patient. Throughout his career, he worked tirelessly to maintain a perfect image before the public, hiding both his illness and his true feelings. But things worsened on a freezing night in December 1996, after a concert in Chicago, when Germaine began feeling that something inside him was terribly wrong. Fevers hit him out of nowhere, his skin burned hot, and his body weakened as if all his strength had drained away. He forced a smile for his fans before retreating to the dressing room, but in truth, he could barely stand. Germaine Stewart refused to go to the hospital, hiding his pain for fear of losing the image he had built over so many years. He worried that if the public found out about his illness, they would abandon him. By March 17, 1997, as spring crept through the windows of a Chicago hospital, Germaine could no longer fight. In a cold room, as a sharp chest pain struck him at 4 a.m., Germaine struggled to lift the phone with trembling hands. He wanted to call someone, perhaps the lover he had hidden from the world, but he no longer had the strength. In the end, he died silently, alone, with no one by his side. Germaine Stewart's death marked the final chapter of a tragedy where a career and a carefully crafted image had come at the cost of an unbearably lonely life. 14. Billie Holiday. A death marked by pain and unforgivable betrayal. Billie Holiday, a legendary voice in the world of jazz, spent her life singing about the sorrows of society and her own. Admired for her extraordinary musical talent, she was forced to conceal her secret love affair with actress Tallulah Bankhead. Few knew that Billie had feelings for both men and women. Every time she met Tallulah, it had to be in secrecy, under the heavy shadow of society's judgment. One night in November 1958, after a tense performance in New York, Billie decided to rest at a small hotel. As she entered the lobby, her eyes fell upon a dark corner. There was Tallulah, walking in with a strange man. Billie froze, her body paralyzed by the sight. The pain and betrayal surged up violently as she watched Tallulah giving another the same sweet kisses and tender care she had once received. Their secret love had now turned into tragedy. The feeling of abandonment, betrayal, and denial crashed over Billie like a relentless wave. Sinking deeper into isolation, Billie could no longer withstand the pain. In the days that followed, she submerged herself further into alcohol and drugs, numbing her soul against the storm inside. Billie Holiday's death on July 17, 1959, at just 44 years old, marked the tragic end of a life filled with secrets and unbearable sorrow. She died in a hospital room at Metropolitan Hospital in New York, tormented by the ravages of liver and heart disease. Adding to the cruelty, Billie was placed under police surveillance even as she lay dying, treated like a criminal to the bitter end. It was the final humiliation in a life already crushed by pain and loneliness. Billie's death was not just the loss of a musical legend, but the final haunting symbol of a life suffocated by lies and wounds that would never heal. 13. Keith Barrow, the son who betrayed family tradition. Keith Barrow, born in 1954, was the son of famed civil rights activist Reverend Willie Barrow, and a talented artist in his own right, celebrated in the soul and disco scenes of the 70s and early 80s. He began his music career with a gospel group, carrying the heavy expectations of a family rooted in activism. But for Keith Barrow, life was never a path paved with roses, especially in love and relationships. Born into a family that fought for community rights, Keith had to live in the shadows, hiding his true feelings to protect his career and public image. His secret relationship with a fellow male musician remained carefully guarded. After every performance, Keith would hurriedly leave the stage to meet his lover in a secret basement hidden beneath a local bar. Each meeting meticulously planned, desperate to remain undiscovered. As his career began rising in the 70s, the silent ache of forbidden love continued gnawing at his soul. For in the world of music, a same-sex relationship was unthinkable. One day, in October 1983, at his home in Chicago, as persistent fevers racked his failing body, Keith realized he could no longer hide his HIV diagnosis. In his final months, disease ravaged his body with indescribable pain. Every drawn-out cough served as a bitter reminder of how fragile his life had become. Fearing the stigma that would fall upon his lover, Keith never called for him. In his last moments, he couldn't reach out to anyone, couldn't whisper a final word of love, and so the truth of his heart died silently with him. 12. Langston Hughes, Love Poems Locked Away in a Safe. Langston Hughes, the legendary poet of the Harlem Renaissance, known for masterpieces like The Weary Blues, 1926, lived a life filled with unspoken truths. Behind the stirring verses, he concealed a deep, unexpressed love for County Cullen, a close friend he adored but could never openly claim. One spring evening in 1943, at a gathering of literary figures, Langston and County exchanged secret words, glances heavy with the emotions they dared not speak. But as Langston left that party, he caught sight of County holding hands with another woman, right before his eyes. It was a moment that shattered Langston's heart, making him feel as if the entire world had turned its back on him. The betrayal, the abandonment, the raw loneliness collapsed upon him like a crumbling building. After that night, Langston's spirit spiraled into deep depression. Though his career continued to soar, the sorrow carved into his heart never truly healed. Every sacrifice he made seemed increasingly hollow. By late 1964, his health deteriorated, with prostate cancer further eroding his body and soul. On May 22, 1967, in a cold hospital room in New York, Langston Hughes passed away in utter loneliness, with no one by his side, only the faded echoes of hopes long extinguished. Soon after his death, rumors surfaced about a collection of unpublished love poems discovered locked in his safe, verses believed to reveal the private truths of Langston's life. Yet his heirs swiftly buried them, protecting the public image he had fought to maintain all his life. 11th Octavia Street, Laurent. Was love ever real for a trans woman? In the late 1980s, Octavia Street Laurent, a trans woman, rose as a dazzling star on the ballroom catwalks, becoming a vital icon for the American LGBTQ+ community. In the winter of 1991, amidst Manhattan's biting cold, Octavia fell for a mysterious man, a short-lived yet fiery love that made her believe, for once, that fate had smiled upon her. But in the end, there were only unanswered phone calls, long nights curled up on a worn-out bed, and tears soaking her pillow as she realized that, for a trans woman like her, love would forever be a cruel joke. By 2008, cancer struck her fragile body like a silent curse. No more catwalks, no more applause, only a moldy apartment in Harlem, dim light leaking through a tiny window, moans of pain echoing through the loneliness, and coughing fits that tore at her chest night after night. On May 17, 2009, amidst a cold, drizzling rain, Octavia was found slumped in a battered armchair, her eyes wide open in despair, her face marked by the suffering of a life cast aside by the world. She left quietly, like a fallen angel nobody had time to catch. Octavia Street Laurent, no matter how radiant she once was simply another soul who longed desperately to live freely, just like everyone else. 10. Melvin Dixon, the abandoned writer. Melvin Dixon, a brilliant poet, novelist, and scholar of the 1980s, was once hailed as a beacon of black queer literature. Yet behind the brief flicker of fame, his life veered into tragic darkness. The deep love he shared with Richard Howard withered as illness crept in. AIDS quietly devoured Melvin's body, while loved ones gradually disappeared one by one. Melvin writhed through endless nights of fever, abandoned amid bitter pills and unanswered letters. Silence stretched cold and merciless. Even the academic circles that once celebrated him turned their backs because his writings on queerness and discrimination were deemed too raw, too honest. On a gloomy afternoon of October 26, 1992, as autumn leaves fell gently outside, Melvin Dixon lay dying on his bed in a small New York apartment. His clouded eyes strained toward the door, still hoping for a miracle, for forgiveness, for a final goodbye. But all he found was a chilling emptiness. His final novel manuscript was destroyed by publishers, too fearful of the truths it contained. When his last breath left his body, frozen in despair, Melvin Dixon carried away an entire world of secrets the public would never come to know. 9. Essex Hemphill, the poet silenced by tragic love. In the 1980s, amidst the surging tides of the LGBTQ+ movement, Essex Hemphill carved his legacy with searing poetry, especially his iconic collection ceremonies. Beneath each line simmered a slow, burning pain. Essex had fallen for Marlon Riggs, a gifted filmmaker, a love that seemed destined to save them both. But their relationship, intense and fiery, was slowly undone by AIDS, a disease still dripping with brutal stigma at the time. When Marlon died in 1994, Essex found himself standing at the edge of a vast, empty abyss, surrounded by fragments of a love that was never allowed to be whole. Ravaged by physical and emotional agony, Essex kept writing, his poems growing darker, heavier, saturated with hopelessness. On November 4, 1995, when the knocks at the door no longer brought comfort, Essex fell into utter despair. He passed away at 38, impoverished, alone in a barren room in Washington, D.C., with no one left to hold him or whisper a final goodbye. His unfinished works remain buried in the broken memories of a love story that never had the chance to end properly. 8. Marcia P. Johnson, Even Warriors Fall. Now we move on to another tragic story of a trans icon. Marcia P. Johnson was more than just a transgender woman. She was a warrior of the LGBTQ+ movement, fighting relentlessly for rights and dignity. Born in 1945, she spent her life battling societal scorn, enduring poverty, and surviving countless police harassments. In the 1960s, she co-founded the Gay Liberation Front and the Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, STAR, with Sylvia Rivera, to protect trans people, sex workers, and the abandoned. Yet behind the fierce smile were countless nights of loneliness. On the night of July 6, 1992, Marcia P. Johnson disappeared under mysterious circumstances. Her body was found floating in the Hudson River near Christopher Street Pier the following morning, a place deeply tied to the LGBTQ+ community in New York. Though officially ruled a suicide, many believed she had been murdered due to her political activism. The wounds and mysteries surrounding her death have never been fully explained. Marcia had been abandoned, not only by society, but also by those who should have protected her. 7. Whitney Houston, an eternal voice, a death wrapped in controversy. Whitney Houston, the immortal diva of pop and R&B, lived a life marked by storms. Even long after conquering the pinnacle of fame, she struggled with inner demons she could never outrun. Her tumultuous relationship with Bobby Brown, the rumors about her bond with close friend Robin Crawford, and the whispered speculations about her sexuality all forced Whitney deeper into isolation. By the early 2000s, burdened by debt and instability, Whitney Houston spiraled further into drug abuse and illness. Her death on February 11, 2012, at age 48 in the Beverly Hilton Hotel, rocked the world. She was found dead in her hotel bathtub, the official cause listed as accidental drowning. But whispers lingered, rumors of a murder orchestrated within the music industry to silence her if she dared reveal her truth. And so, Whitney Houston left this world as the ultimate symbol of a lonely artist whose secrets remain forever buried. 6. Willie Ninja, the silent pain behind the dance legacy. Willie Ninja, founder of the House of Ninja, was a legend in the ballroom scene and a pioneer of the voguing dance style that Madonna would later popularize worldwide. But despite his influence, Willie never lived bathed in glory. As an openly gay man, he faced constant underappreciation and exploitation from the fashion and music industries without ever receiving the recognition he deserved. Life for Willie Ninja was anything but easy. Though talented and iconic, he lived in poverty and had no health insurance when he was diagnosed with AIDS. Willie passed away on September 2, 2006, at just 45 years old, from heart failure, a complication linked to AIDS. He died in his modest New York home, in silent pain and without proper medical care. His death was not just the loss of an artist, but the quiet erasure of a monument never fully celebrated. Yet his dreams and creations live on, in every twirl, every pose, every whispered tribute on ballroom floors across the world. 5. James Baldwin, watched by the FBI until his last breath. James Arthur Baldwin, born in 1924, was one of the most powerful literary voices of the 20th century. Yet even as he gained recognition, Baldwin faced relentless discrimination from society and the publishing world for living openly as a gay man. On a freezing night in December 1987, inside his quiet home in Saint-Paul-de-Vence, France, James Baldwin succumbed to the ravages of stomach cancer. Throughout his life, he lived under the terror of being exposed, the burden of FBI surveillance, and the betrayals of people he once trusted. In his final days, the greatest pain was not from disease, but from isolation, from never truly being able to live freely. When he died, there was no family gathered around, only a few artist friends, none of whom could fill the profound void he carried inside. Before his death, rumors swirled that Baldwin had left behind a final letter, confessing he had been monitored by the FBI solely because of his sexuality. 4th, Audre Lorde, a love that could never speak its name. Audre Lorde, born in 1934, was a towering figure in feminism and queer literature. Yet her life was a mosaic of heartbreak, not just battling illness, but the weight of unspoken love. For years, she harbored deep feelings for feminist icon Frances Clayton, but never dared to say it out loud. On a cold October morning in 1989, inside a sterile hospital in New York, Lorde held the hand of the woman she loved, a love buried by time and prejudice. Knowing her end was near, Lorde penned her final poem, a desperate love song that her family later destroyed to protect reputations. 3 years later, in 1992, on the distant island of St. Croix, liver cancer consumed her final breaths. In a damp house filled with the scent of rain, Lorde gazed wide-eyed toward the dark ocean and slipped away. A great flame extinguished, leaving behind only endless night in the hearts of those who fought alongside her. 3. Lorraine Hansberry, a star fading at its brightest. Lorraine Hansberry, the brilliant African American playwright and author of the legendary play A Raisin in the Sun, was also one of the earliest underground voices for LGBT rights in the 1960s. In 1965, in a small apartment in New York, Lorraine slowly withered away under the dark shadow of pancreatic cancer. At just 34 years old, she quietly watched her unfinished manuscripts and unperformed plays like dreams burning out right in the palm of her hand. Hansberry had once been part of secret LGBT advocacy groups, silently fighting for her own truth in a world not yet ready to embrace it. Behind the glamour of the stage, she lived with a profound loneliness, unable to voice her true love. In her final days, Lorraine grew frail, her breath breaking like the desperate notes of an unfinished song. Just before she passed, she clutched a love letter she had never dared to send to a mysterious woman. Yet afterward, her family burned the letter before anyone could read it. That New York winter bit deep into the skin, the whitewashed walls around her closing in like an early grave. A brilliant star was extinguished while still shining brightly at its zenith. 2. Josephine Baker, The Hidden Photograph. Buried to the end. Josephine Baker, the legendary African American artist, dancer, singer, actress, and civil rights activist, once lit up the grand stages of Paris. In April 1975, under the dazzling lights of Paris, Josephine performed her final dance at a gala celebrating her life's work. After the explosive performance, she returned to her modest apartment, exhausted but burning with pride. Though rumors had long swirled about a deep romance with Frida Kahlo and other women, Josephine never openly admitted these relationships, instead pouring her emotions into fleeting glances and melancholic songs. That night, she suffered a brain hemorrhage and collapsed among a sea of flowers and congratulatory telegrams. When paramedics arrived, they found a hidden photograph tucked beneath her pillow, an image of Josephine kissing a woman backstage, a memory she had fiercely guarded throughout her career. In the cold, unfeeling coma of a Paris hospital, Josephine Baker faded away, never hearing the applause that had once filled her life. She left behind a weight of secrets, never spoken aloud. 1. Sylvia Rivera, The Warrior. Abandoned by the world she saved. Sylvia Rivera, born in 1951 in New York, was one of the first to fight for LGBTQ+ rights, especially for trans people, at a time when even a different name could mean destruction. She fought at the Stonewall riots of 1969, founded shelters for homeless LGBTQ+ youth, and shouted for justice for the forgotten. But Sylvia's life was never easy. She was not only abandoned by society, but eventually shunned by the respectable LGBTQ+ community itself, viewed as a burden, a wild spirit to be cast out. In her later years, Sylvia scraped by in makeshift housing around New York, battling the liver cancer that was silently consuming her. In February 2002, in the icy hospital room of St. Vincent's, she whispered the name of Marcia P. Johnson, her departed friend, the only one who had ever truly held her hand against the world's cruelty. There were no grand speeches, no parades in her memory. Sylvia Rivera passed away in utter loneliness, leaving behind a flame burnt out for freedom, for justice, and for a world that never truly deserved her sacrifices. The bitter ending to Sylvia Rivera's life closes the chapter on 19 African American LGBTQ+ artists who died in pain and isolation. Whether they lived openly as their true selves or hid behind walls of silence, they all shared the same cruel fate, rejected by society, betrayed by love, and erased by history in their final moments. Did you feel sadness, anger, or heartbreak reading any of their stories? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to share this video and subscribe to our channel so we can continue uncovering the forgotten journeys of history's hidden legends.